Hi guys, my name is Christine and I'm a dating, relationship and personal development coach. And today I'm talking about some women don't realize this is the reason why they're single and can't find a good man. Now, I've seen this happen to numerous women that I've coached, that I've been friends with, that I know in my personal life, right? And it's just something that I've seen quite often, right? And it's a bit of a shame because a lot of women don't even realize that what they're doing is wrong, and they're still questioning why they're single. They don't know why it is that they can't seem to find a good man, and then they end up in their 30s or even their 40s, and they just don't realize why they haven't been able to find a good man, right? And why they haven't been able to get into a relationship and they haven't been able to get married and things like that. Okay, so one of these things, right, and this is quite a big one, is that there's a difference between, unfortunately, between women, that men will just sleep with, and then there's the other category of women that, men will marry and settle down with, and obviously sleep with too, obviously, find attractive and whatnot. But there are some women that men just find that they just want to have sex with, and they don't want anything else with that person because of different personality traits. So, for example, there's something that you see a lot when you're a teenager and you go to like clubs and stuff. Usually the women that are, trying to attract men through their looks, through like dancing sexily or whatever, at these clubs, right? These are the women that most of the time men will find attractive and want to sleep with, want to have a one night stand with. But the women that they will want to have a relationship with and be with are ones that they're probably not going to find in the club. They're ones that they're probably going to meet at work, who they go to school with, things like that. And it's those women who have a little bit of more modesty. They have a bit more modesty and they're very nurturing and they're very feminine, right? They might be really good with children and things like that, right? And those are the women that they're more attracted to, and would want to, make their wife and to be the mother of their children, right? There's a quote that I really like, and I don't quite remember where I picked it up from, but men like a woman who is classy on the streets, right? A classy woman, basically, right? Who's, very nurturing, very kind, very generous, that kind of thing. But a slut in the sheets, but only for him, right? But only for him, right? And that's what a lot of guys want. That's what most guys want. They want a woman who's very classy, when it comes to when she's out in public and out with other people. But when she's with him and they're intimate, that's when she can be a little bit more of a bring on her saucy side. But she does it only for him, right? So if a guy sees a woman out and about, who's, let's say, like he's in a bar or he's in a nightclub or something like that, and he sees a woman that's acting quite sultry, right, and she's dancing sexily or whatever it may be, yeah, he will want to sleep with her. He will find that attractive in that way, but he won't want to wife her. He won't want to marry her. Okay, so it's important that you, as a woman, right, dive more into your more of your femininity. The more feminine side of yourself, not the saucy, dark side, right? Because that's what he wants in private. Okay, that's what he wants in private. But what he wants generally, he wants a woman that's a lovely, like, social butterfly. Maybe not all the time. It doesn't have to be like that because maybe he's the social butterfly. And it's quite interesting actually in dynamics and relationships. There is usually one that is more of the social butterfly, which is the woman generally, and the one that's more quiet, more keeps to himself, keeps to themselves, is the guy usually, right? But sometimes that dynamic can switch up, right? And sometimes you'll get a guy who's very outgoing, who's very, much the social butterfly, a great host, and his wife is more quiet and subdued, right? So sometimes it can happen both ways. It can happen like that, right? So that's one important thing to keep in mind, right? Of how you're coming across when you're in public, right, and with other people. Because when you're trying to attract a guy, right, it's better to not act in that certain way, to act sultry around him when there are other people about, right? It's better to do that in private when you're just with him, even if you are trying to attract him, right? It's better to be more modest. Now, I'm not saying that you should dress or you should cover yourself up and things like that. You should dress however you want to dress, right? Whatever makes you feel confident, whatever makes you feel comfortable, right? But it's the attitude, it's the behavior that I'm trying to put across here, not so much what you're wearing, right? Okay, it's having that modest sort of like attitude, okay? And how you come across. That's what's really important there, okay? So another point that I want to talk about is that just because, right, let's say you've had trouble finding a man, right? Let's say you've had trouble finding a man, a good man, right? And you always seem to go from one relationship to another. You can't seem to get a guy to stick with you, right? Another thing is that you've got to keep in mind that just because you feel like, oh no, maybe what she's going to say is I should just settle for any guy that gives me any attention, because that's not true. What I'm telling you to do, right, and what I want you to do is, just because, right, you haven't been able to find a good man, it doesn't mean that you should settle, right, for a guy who's just nice to you, right? I'm not, because sometimes it can get like the other way around, and people are like, oh, that guy was really nice to you, you should just be with him. But the point is that if a woman's not attracted to him, she won't want to be with him, right? If she's not physically attracted to him. So you can find a guy who is decent, right? Who also, right, you're attracted to, okay? But it's really important that you do dive into these more feminine traits, right? These more sort of like modest, sweet sort of traits, nurturing traits, right? Because that's what's going to ultimately attract a good man to you, okay? Right? You've got to be a good woman in order to attract a good man, okay? And what does good look like? Well, good is someone who is modest, right? Good is someone who is nurturing, takes care of other people, cares about other people to a large degree. Okay? It's not about being self-centered and egotistical, right? It really isn't, okay? So if you want to attract a good man, then you also have to adopt good qualities, because you are what you attract, okay? So that's just something to keep in mind. You've got to think about, okay, so this was my last guy that I had. This was the last guy that I was with. It didn't work out with him, right? So what was I doing, right? What was my behavior, okay? Because you can't really do much about his behavior, right? Because his behavior was out of your control, right? But you can always have control of your behavior. Always. Right? You can always be in control of yourself. Right? You can't control him, but you can control you. You can control how you show up. So you've got to think of, okay, so how was I showing up? How was I showing up in that relationship or that dating process? What was going on with me? What was I doing? How was I behaving? What was I doing that I thought was attractive that maybe wasn't attractive? Right? And that's what you got to think about, okay? But you can find a good guy, right, who you're attracted to. It doesn't, so don't worry about people saying like, yeah, but he was nice, you should have just been with him, or feeling like you have to be with the nice guy just because he's nice to you and you're not attracted to him. You can have both. You can have your cake and eat it too, essentially, okay? So the issue that I'm seeing generally, and why there's big issues around these things, is that from what I've observed, okay, is that society is trying to feminize men, right? And it's working, sadly, right? That's why it's very difficult for a woman to find a good man, right? A good man who isn't, a pushover, basically. Because women don't want, you as a woman, you probably won't want a guy that's a pushover. You want a guy who's a leader and is, mentally strong and stable, right? Mentally stable too, right? But because of like all the movies and TV shows that get like shoved down our throats, you always see the man being really compliant, and he's kind of like always worried about what his wife thinks. I'm thinking about like the father in Modern Family, like the main guy with like the dark hair. I'm thinking about him. He's a really bad stereotype, right, of what women will find attractive. Right, because that is not it, right? That is not the kind of man that a woman finds attractive. That guy, right? Unless she's very, very masculine, right? And she's looking for a guy that's more feminine. But ultimately, most of the time, women are looking for guys who are masculine. Most of the time, because most women are feminine, right? So they're looking for a guy who's a leader, who's like a rock, who's like a mountain when it comes to his emotions, who's a bit more stoic, right? Because it combats and it kind of neutralizes her emotions, right? Because as women, sometimes we can get quite emotional, right? And that's fine. It's okay about that, because our brains are a little bit different, right? There's a video, I think it's called like the Tale of Two Brains or something like that. But it's a really good like comedy sketch And the guy is really good at describing the differences between the male and the female brain, and how with a woman, like, everything is sort of connected. Like, so if you've got an issue with, like, the washing machine, whatever it may be, that may be making you worry about all these other different things, because, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to get the clothes done on time. I'm not going to be able to get my, I'm not going to be able to go to work because my clothes aren't going to be sorted out, or it could be like, oh, that's making me worried about the garden because I need to go out and do the gardening but I can't do that because I need to focus on the washing machine, and I've got that to do, I've got this to do, and I can't do it because I've got this washing machine problem, right? Or it could be that you've got a problem going on at work, right? And you've got problems in your business or whatever it may be, and you've got these issues, and that's affecting your life at home, because when you're at home you can't help but think about the rest of your job situation and your financial situation. And then you get and then with men, right, it's different, right? They kind of have like their life in boxes, like compartments. So when they go to work, that's it. When they come home, they're not really thinking about work that much. They might be thinking about it a little bit, but not as much as what a woman would be if they're having trouble at work. So they have like little compartments for their life. They have a compartment for the house. They have a compartment for their family. They have a compartment for their work. They have a compartment for their hobbies. And these boxes never touch, right? So he just kind of jumps from one to the other. And if there's an issue going in one of the boxes, right, when he's doing something else, like I say, he's got like the issue he's having at work, right? But when he's at home, he doesn't really think about it too much, right? But with a woman, it's much different. Like, it's like everything affects everything else. And that's kind of like the difference between a male and a female brain, okay? And what you see in society these days is men acting like women and women acting like men. And it's causing all of this confusion, okay? Which is why it's difficult for some guys to find a girlfriend and to find a good woman, because they don't realize that they've adopted all these feminine traits. And it's difficult for some women to find a guy because maybe they've adopted a lot of masculine traits, or they've learnt bad ways of attracting guys, okay? And therefore, both of these groups have issues with dating and finding someone to be with. So it's not necessarily your fault, 100%, if you can't find a good man. It might be just society that, there's not enough good men out there, because they're all being taught that they need to be compliant, that they need to be feminine, and they need to act a certain way, and they need to be in tune with their emotions and all these kinds of things, right? Which is fine if that's a feminine guy, but most guys don't want to deal with things in that way. A good book that you can read on the differences between men and women, Men are from Mars and Women are from Venus, and that'll give you a good clear-cut view on how we communicate different, how our brains are different, and things like that. And it's really, really amazing. It's a really valuable resource, but you can find a good man. You've got to believe that. You've got to believe that for yourself. But there may be some tweaks that you can change in your behavior, right? And maybe you haven't already done, maybe perhaps you've already worked on those things, right? Perhaps you already know about that, or perhaps, with the thing I was talking about before at the beginning of, like, maybe perhaps you're acting in a certain way that's not attracting men, because men have women that they will sleep with, and then there's another separate category of women that they will marry and wife. Like, perhaps you already are in that category of men that would love to actually marry you and settle down with you, and that may be the case. But, right, what you got to realize is that it may be that you are having trouble because of the fact that you're dating the wrong guys, right? You're just searching for the wrong guys, right? So you need to keep on dating, right? If you are having struggles with finding a man, then you need to persist with dating. Because what I believe is, like, dating is a game of numbers. You have to keep on going through people, right, for guys, basically, until you find that one that does really like you and you really like back. Okay, now that doesn't mean that you have to sleep with every single one of them, right? It just means that, what I always say to people, when it comes to dating, is the best thing to do is when you go on a first date with someone, do something inexpensive first. Just go out for a drink. Because if you don't like the guy, you can just say, hey, I had a nice chat with you, I had a nice time getting to know you, and now we can, I'll be in touch, basically, right? But if you do like the guy and you're on a date with him, then you can do more. Then you can, like, maybe on that date go out somewhere else. You can go out for dinner or something like that. Okay, you can extend the date. You can make the date longer. But so you don't have to, like, break your bank, basically, meeting up with all these different guys trying to find the right one for you. You don't have to do that. You can just solely meet out for a drink, and it doesn't even have to be an alcoholic one. If, let's say, you're underage or anything like that, you could be up for like a coffee or a tea or something like that. You can do that, or meet up for a smoothie or whatever it is, right? That you want to do. Okay. So you don't have to, but ultimately, the more guys you meet, the more likely it is that you're going to find the right one for you. So you don't give up. Don't keep on persisting. Definitely do not give up. You can find a good guy for you. Okay, so you got to realize these things. Okay, essentially. So thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to get in touch with me personally and you'd like coaching with me, then please go to www.ChristineLoveridge.com. I shall talk to you again very soon. Goodbye.